Boy, it sure has been a busy week, as it typically is when the Daytona 500 is happening. But this is something I needed to talk about because our old buddy Adam Stern dropped a Stern bomb on Monday of this week, and we got to talk about it. And because of this, it's a Kyle Larson Indy 500 video! Yes. Okay. We have Hendrick Motorsports behind and backing a Kyle Larson Indy 500 ride whenever it ends up happening. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about why A, Kyle Larson will not be in the Indy 500 this year, but also B, how he's going to get there in the future. And a major step was taken with this article from Adam Stern, which will be linked in the description. Of course, he writes for the Sports Business Journal. And this quote is from an article he wrote about Jeff Gordon, and Jeff Gordon stepping up and really becoming a huge part of Hendrick Motorsports, bigger than he has been in the past. And Stern asked him specifically about Larson at the Indianapolis 500, and this is what the article goes on to say. One big question is whether Larson will ever enter the Indianapolis 500. Gordon says it's unlikely for this year, but after that, we're open to it. But we'd like to at least discuss as a group what makes the most sense. This is the priority here. If he went to drive the Indy 500, we'd want to make sure we're supporting it, embracing it, and excited about it because we think both can be done well. The organization itself is open to dabbling in other forms of racing. Gordon didn't get specific, but we have prepared where motorsports, or we have to be prepared where motorsports and NASCAR is headed. It's our bread and butter and what we love, but at the same time, we love cars, and we're a company that has culture of performance, cars, and racing. And if the right opportunity comes up to do something with General Motors, in addition to NASCAR, we would absolutely be open-minded. Whoa! So I've already talked about this, but if you didn't see the Sebring testing video on Monday, you probably missed this. So this is a bombshell, I want to say, because at least the way it's put together in that article, and no one's really come out and said otherwise, this sure does seem like Jeff Gordon is saying, if Kyle Larson's coming to the Indy 500, Hendrick Motorsports is going to be a part of it. Now, how big of a part of it? That's the question. And the other question, of course, is, with that nugget about the potential for Hendrick Motorsports to expand outside of NASCAR, by the way, they already have, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but Hendrick Motorsports potentially expanding outside of NASCAR and into other series with General Motors support. Remind me what one of the two engine manufacturers in IndyCar is? It's Chevrolet, right? I don't want to get too excited about the possibility of a Hendrick Motorsports IndyCar program, but that seems like that is on the table. Now, the question is going to be how and why it could happen. Certainly, I think the easiest way for Hendrick Motorsports to jump in to IndyCar, especially if there's just supporting Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson's not going to be a full-time IndyCar driver, at least in the short term. I probably would have said that about Jimmy Johnson 10 years ago, and it would have turned out to be incorrect. So I don't want to say never on Kyle Larson being a full-time IndyCar driver, but at least in the short term, it's not going to happen. So if Kyle Larson's running IndyCar, it's going to be the Indianapolis 500, maybe like Texas or something, to get acquainted with the car. So what I could see is kind of what happened, 20 years ago with Richard Childress, and kind of getting involved with like Robbie Gordon when they came over. They partnered with Team Menard and ran a second car for Robbie Gordon. I think they also partnered with AJ Foyt the year before. The same thing kind of happened with Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs, while wasn't like a direct, really involved partner, he helped get Tony Stewart to Chip Ganassi Racing in 2001. So things like this are not, completely unheard of, but you got to think about the options on Team Chevy, and I think everybody, including the late Robin Miller, I mean, really, you got to, thank Robin Miller for getting a lot of this talk really hot and heavy with Kyle Larson going to the Indy 500. I mean, ultimately, it was his last article, his last wish to get Kyle Larson to the Indianapolis 500 with Team Penske. Well, Team Penske is a General Motors team, and it also helps that, of course, Roger owns the series and the Speedway. So it's not too much of a stretch to think that Hendrick Motorsports could crew an extra car for Team Penske at some point at the Indy 500. Now, why won't it happen this year? It's talked about in the article that Jeff Gordon said, oh, okay, yeah, it's unlikely that Larson's going to run the Indy 500 this year. There's a couple reasons for this. Number one, it's just far too late to put together a competitive program. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to put together a competitive enough program to qualify right now, and many programs behind the scenes, just hold on. We'll get to a video where we talk about the Indy 500 entry list again. There's still programs that are being put together right now. There are drivers with funding. There are teams with cars. There are some engines available. Everybody's trying to scramble to get into the 500 right now. Does Kyle Larson really want or deserve to be a part of that? No. So for Kyle Larson, you want to announce this probably a year in advance. If they're going to do this, by the latest, I think you want to, announce this in the fall of this year. You don't want to be announcing it late because look, think about this. I always point to Paretta Autosport as the great example of this because it's the same kind of similar situation where you had a kind of big time media darling sort of thing coming together. Penske put it all together. Penske foot the bill for everything, and they announced it fairly late. They announced it in January. And you look at Team Penske's performance, and the whole team was not very great at the Indy 500 last year, at least until race day, and Simon Pagenaud kind of pulled them up by their bootstraps. But, Paretta Autosport could have missed the show last year pretty easily. So does Kyle Larson really want to be racing for 33rd place? No. So you don't want to put that program together too late, and you certainly don't want to be scrambling, in February to put it together. So from that perspective, no, it's already a bad idea. And the second thing is engines. Engine supply issues are really becoming an issue for IndyCar. Everybody talks about there are supposedly 18 Hondas and 18 Chevys available. That would give us 36 cars. Honda has been pretty stingy up until this point. They are only really committed to 17 engines. There continue to be rumors and all sorts of things about what may or may not happen with Honda's 18th engine. What I keep hearing is it's a backup engine in case one of their major stars like a Colton Herta or a Scott Dixon or a Jimmy Johnson blows an engine. But we'll wait and see. But at this point, I'm not expecting any bombshells from Honda. So maybe you've got 18 Chevys, but chances are that's going to be all spoken for. We'll have to wait and see. Looking ahead to next year and looking ahead to the future of Hendrick Motorsports, it's very interesting because while they're not involved in IndyCar yet, obviously there's a willingness to be involved in it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's the only place they're looking. You may see on the desk here, we've got the Ally Bank Cadillac from Action Express Racing. But what you may or may not know is that this car is crewed by Hendrick Motorsports staff and is actually a Chad Knaus kind of project. So they're already there. They're already in NHRA drag racing. They're a sponsor of a pro stock team. And I also think that, looking at Jeff Gordon, especially as he begins to take much more of an active role in Hendrick Motorsports, and especially that Kyle Larson's kind of his pet project, well, Kyle Larson and Jeff Gordon came from very similar roots. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jeff Gordon talks, say Chevy, into putting together some sort of a development program in, say, the World of Outlaws or USAC Racing, some of that grassroots stuff to try to find Hendrick Motorsports the next Kyle Larson. And where they take him, of course, would be the other question, because let's say they start an IMSA program. Let's say they start an IndyCar team. What's stopping them from going out and, having a Kyle Larson or the equivalent just run everything and win everything? If you've got that driver, why not use him to the maximum of his ability? He's on the pole position for the Daytona 500, and I know that's a lot more about car, but he is going to be the guy who is, based on the odds, going to be the favorite going into the Daytona 500. He's a NASCAR champion. He won the most races last year, and it looks like he's got a bright future ahead of him. hopefully it includes some extra motorsports. Well, it already does include extra motorsports. Let's just say it, the Indy 500. We hope it involves that pretty soon. Certainly I do. I think it'd be great for the sport, and I welcome Hendrick Motorsports with open arms. I hope they come over to the dark side and run some open wheel stuff. We'd love to see it. So, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. It's going to be a wild weekend at Daytona, and we'll be here right to talk about it as soon as things happen. We'll see you in the next video.